Welcome back to the apple tree analogy. I'm Melissa. So I want to talk today a little bit about anxiety and grounding yourself when you're having like times of great anxiety, or specifically when you're having an anxiety attack. This has been on my mind a lot lately, as my daughter seems to be having a lot more anxiety attacks that we're dealing with, especially around bedtime. So it's something that's been on my mind and something I've been thinking about a lot. So I was talking to my daughter about her anxiety and what techniques that we've tried that seem to really work for her. So her and I kind of came up with a list together of some of the things that work for us. If you go online and Google grounding techniques or techniques for anxiety, anything like that, you're going to find there's tons and tons and tons of information. Just Google it. So some of the things that we've tried are things that work for us are 5 senses, and I'll explain all these things in a minute. But so 5 senses, deep breathing, counting or doing math, singing, and naming it are kind of our top 5 things that we do. And then there's more, and I'll get into those in a minute. So the 5 senses. It kind of almost can turn into a game when you're in that moment of feeling that anxiety rising, or you're in an anxiety attack. Take a minute, just stop and think, okay, 5 senses. What are 5 things I can see? And you name them. So for example, I'm sitting here and I can see my curtains. I can see my bed. I can see my picture. I can see my bookcase, that kind of thing. But I take it a step further for the 5 senses and I describe what they look like. So my picture, it's an acrylic painting of an apple tree. My bed, my headboard is wood, and it's, kind of big and bulky because it's got cabinets that you can open. My bookshelf is covered in books. It's got like a giraffe on it. It's got, different things on it. Like that kind of thing. You describe what you're seeing. Don't just say what you're seeing, describe it. So then 4 things you can touch. So I can touch my necklace and it feels metal. It feels a little bit cool on one side, but the other side's warm because it's been against my body. I can touch my water bottle that's sitting right next to me and it feels cold because it's got ice in it. So 4 things you can touch, 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear. Now right now it's really quiet in my room, but normally at night, like when I'm laying with my daughter in her room, we always go, okay, well, we can hear the cars driving outside. We can hear, my youngest son always listens to meditation while he's falling asleep, so she can usually from her room hear the meditation in his room. You can hear the ceiling fan going. You can hear the air conditioner running. And then you describe what that sounds like. So the cars, you can hear the engines revving up. The meditation is a woman's voice generally telling a story, and so then my daughter will kind of tell me what she can hear of the story, if she can understand what it's saying, or if it's music, or whatever. And then 2 things you can smell. It's easy if you're like down in the kitchen or something. It's a little bit harder. So her thing lately, she's like, Mom, I can smell your deodorant and it smells like baby powder. Okay, we'll go with that. Or you can smell the laundry detergent on your clothes or on your blankets, or you can smell the rain and it smells fresh and clean, that type of thing. And then finally, 1 thing you can taste. Now, if you're not somewhere where you can actually put something in your mouth, think about something you would like to taste. So you could taste ice cream, and it's really warm today, so I'm doing cold stuff. Ice cream is, has that vanilla flavor if it's vanilla ice cream, or say you want to eat an Oreo cookie and that's the chocolate and the icing, or your popcorn and the texture of the popcorn in your mouth. So you name your senses, you name what you can associate with those senses, and then you describe it. So again, it's 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And it doesn't have to be necessarily in that order. If you can hear a whole bunch of stuff and you want to do that as 5 things you can hear, that's totally fine. For me, I just find, especially at night when we're trying to be quiet, there's not as much you can hear. We're up in her bedroom, so there's not much you can smell, and there's definitely not really anything she can taste in her bedroom, unless she has juice or water or something with her. So So that's the five senses. The next is deep breathing. And I do like belly breathing. Some people call it box breathing. And you can do it different ways, like for different counts and stuff. But what I find works best for me is to breathe in through your nose while you count to 8. While you're doing that, if you're sitting or lying, or even standing, lift your chest up. So if you're lying in your bed, lift your chest off your bed. Count, inhale through your nose, count to 8. Then I like to hold it for 5, not so for 5 counts, not so it's uncomfortable, but just hold it for just a few seconds. And then you breathe out through your mouth. When I breathe out through my mouth, so I do it slowly to the count of 8 again. So in for 8, hold for 5, out for 8. What I do as I breathe out is as I'm exhaling, I say, relax, relax. And that just for me is a mental trigger that I need to relax. I need to calm down. But also then my chest is up because I lifted it up while I was breathing in. Then I push my back and push my chest back into my chair, into my bed, or just bring it back down and just really pull down with it. And so then as I do it, each time I breathe in, I feel like I go higher. Each time I breathe out and say relax, I go deeper. So you're getting deeper and deeper with relaxation with every breath. And I like to try and do that about 10 times. I know for me, I usually do this at night before I go to bed, just as practice to do it. And I maybe make it 3 or 4, big deep breaths before I fall asleep. Because it just, for me, is so relaxing because I've done it so often. So that's the deep breathing technique. Counting. When my boys are having a hard time trying to fall asleep and stuff, I'll tell them to count. So like my youngest is 7, so he thinks it's amazing to count super high. So I say, count as high as you can out loud. And so he'll count and he'll usually get to 35, 40 before he's falling asleep. But it's just something to get your brain focused. And that's what most of these exercises are, is just refocusing your brain on something besides what you were thinking about before. With my older kids, I'll say, count from 500 backwards to 0, or count by 7s up to 100, or 100 backwards by 7s. Count by 2s, count by 4s, count by 10s. Whatever you find that's going to work for you. You can also do the doubles. So 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 plus 4 is 8, 8 plus 8 is 16. And onwards. My kids are really, really good at that. They get like 5 or 6 digit numbers really fast. I can go to 64 before I actually have to go, okay, hang on, 64 and 60, yeah, then I have to think about it. If you're really good at math, you can do like long division in your head. I've done that before. I'm not necessarily good at math, but just sitting and trying to think about a math problem, really seems to help. You can also, instead of counting numbers, you can do your ABCs backwards, or you can skip vowels. So instead of going A, B, C, D, E, it'd be A, B, C, D, F. And it's a mind game to try and, wait, which ones am I actually skipping? The next thing that my daughter and I do a lot, and she's really good at this on her own, is singing. So I learned a song in church when I was a little kid, and it's called Hum Your Favorite Hymn. So I'm not going to sing it to you, but it goes, the first verse says, if on occasion you have found your language is in question, or ugly thoughts come in your mind, and that's how it goes, then here's a good suggestion. Then the chorus says, just hum your favorite hymn, sing out with vigor and vim, and you will find it clears your mind. Hum your favorite hymn. So there's been several nights where I'll be laying next to my daughter and she seems fine, and all of a sudden I'll hear her go, and so she starts humming the tune to hum your favorite hymn. And it doesn't have to be a hymn. Obviously, not everybody goes to church. But it's a song that I found, like I said, I learned it as a child in church. And it's just stayed with me that that's something I can do. And the idea of the song is to keep you from, swearing or saying bad things about people. But I think it helps just anything that comes into your mind. Because it does say in there, when ugly thoughts come to your mind. So that's that anxious thinking and stuff. So it can kind of help clear it out. Now my oldest son, he'll start rapping to Hamilton or, whatever. So just whatever song you can think of. You can memorize a poem and recite a poem to yourself. So singing really helps us. And then finally, name it. And this is something for me personally. It doesn't work so much for my daughter, but it really works for me. When I'm having an anxiety attack, I'm like, okay, I have to name it. And I will actually say to myself, if I'm in public, say I'm at Walmart and just something is triggering to me and I'm having an anxiety attack. I don't say it out loud there. I just take a minute and I just kind of close my eyes. I'm having an anxiety attack. I'm going to be okay. This will end in a minute. I'm going to ground myself now. And then I'll find one of the other techniques. Usually, like if I'm out in public, I'll just breathe. I'll just stand there and breathe for a minute and just, maybe look at the shelf, look towards the shelf and make it look like I'm looking at something so people aren't like, what is this nut job doing in the middle of the aisle in Walmart? Or whatever. 5 senses work really, really good when you're in public as well, because people don't know that you're doing that in your head. You can use anchoring phrases, and I'll do this quite a lot, where I'll be like, my name is Melissa. I am 40 years old. I'm in my bedroom, or I'm in the kitchen, or I live in this city. Today is, whatever date. It's June 18th, I think. I don't know what day it is today. It's Friday. I know that much. It is whatever time it is, 3:07 p.m. for me right now. My children are, and then name who your children are. My parents are. So these are truths that your brain, so a lot of times with anxiety, this is why anchoring statements work. With anxiety, your brain is lying to you. So anchoring statements are truths that you cannot deny. It doesn't matter what, your name is not ever going to be different than your first name. You are never going to be 40 years old, but your brain will not convince you that you're 12 years old. You know what I mean? Like, your children are your children. Your parents are your parents. You are physically in whatever room you're in. That's not changing. So anchoring statements help to do exactly that, to anchor you, to ground you, to bring you back down. There's other statements you can use, like you can describe the weather. It is hot and sunny out here today in the Pacific Northwest. It is, raining a lot of times is what I end up doing, because in the Pacific Northwest, it rains a lot. You can name how you're feeling. I am thirsty. I am hungry. So name it. Name the anxiety. Acknowledge that you're having an anxiety attack. And then anchor yourself. Like I said, those are kind of the top that my daughter and I like to do. Other techniques, one that we learned in therapy with the kids is called robot ragdoll. So you first become a robot. So they do it laying in their bed. So you lay and you put your hands straight down at your side and you stiffen all your muscles and you become a really, really tight robot, and you hold that for as long as you can, and then you ragdoll and you just slump down, and then you robot and you tighten up really, really tight, and then you ragdoll. So that works really well. For my youngest son, like I said, he's 7. Something that works amazingly well for him, and it's a concept he can understand, is flower candle. So your finger, the first is a flower, so you have to sniff it in for 10 seconds, or for 10 counts. So you smell that candle, and then, or that flower, then you have to make your candle, your finger turns into a candle, and you have to make your candle flicker. So you blow on it 10 times, and you do that over and over again. And so that's another way of, like, especially with kids, it really helps to force them to do that in through their nose, out through their mouth, circular or box breathing technique, to help bring them down and calm them down in that moment. Other things you can do, physical things. Stick your hands in a glass of water, or in a bowl of water, or a sink of water. Hold an ice cube in your hand. I like to do that. So I'll take an ice cube and I'll hold it in my hand until my hand's really cold. And then, especially if my anxiety is over something that's making me angry, I'll then take that ice cube and I will throw it, like I said, be outside, and I'll smash it against the concrete and just kind of release that way. Pick something up near you and just hold it. Hold a pillow, hold a stuffed animal, whatever it is. Go for a walk. It's a great way to reduce anxiety. Find a favorite smell. So if you're using essential oils and there's one smell you really like peppermint, or, something that brings really fond memories, oils or incense or an air freshener, whatever it is, something that you can bring into your world. So I really like air fresheners, like kind of the citrusy smells, or fruity smells. So I like those to bring in, and it just reminds me of, especially like you get that coconut smell. It makes me think of summertime, which is fun times for me. So bringing in a smell can really help trigger positive memories. The category game. So name as many things as you can in a particular category, like books. How many books can you name? How many songs can you name? How many types of sports can you name? Musical instruments. Think of as many positive things as you can. And then visualization is a huge one. And it's one, I think I use it without realizing I use it all the time. So you can do a relaxation visualization. Like I said, my youngest son does a meditation every night, and so it's taking him actually through a visualization activity. We found a really great YouTube channel. If I remember, I'll put the link in the description, but I think it's called New Horizons, that has bedtime stories or relaxation stories. And so the one he's been listening to lately is about, it's about animals. Something about a dog, and he goes and plays with the dog, and so he's supposed to visualize himself playing with the dog, and so he'll be laying on his bed, and I'll see him like moving and rolling around, even though he's starting to go to sleep, and he's moving and rolling around like he's playing with this dog, you know, or whatever. There's some he's gone to space, or he climbs a mountain, or goes under the sea. So lots of different things like that. You could also visualize yourself doing an enjoyable task. So say it's wintertime, you can't get outside to go for a hike to your favorite hiking location. You could lay, you know, or sit and visualize yourself doing that. Visualize yourself putting on your hiking boots, getting your hiking gear all together, getting in your car, driving to the location. You know, you get out at the head of the hiking trail and you can visualize yourself climbing that mountain, climbing over the rocks, crossing rivers, you know, whatever it is. I visualize myself reading a favorite book. Just, you know, it's late at night, it's dark, I can't really read a book, but I can visualize myself sitting. I like to visualize myself sitting, like I always wanted like one of those window benches where you can just sit with curtains drawn, blocking the whole world off, and you can just sit with all these pillows and comfy things, and that's what I visualize as myself sitting there reading a book. You could visualize yourself just sitting out in a field of flowers, or, you know, if you're religious and enjoy sitting at church, you can visualize yourself sitting at church listening to the, you know, quiet prelude music before your service starts. And then something else that I do a lot, it kind of works in visualization, but I call it letting it go. So, and I guide my kids through this quite often. So I tell them to imagine a giant whiteboard or chalkboard, whatever you choose, and that's all you can see. It encompasses everything around you, and you've got a marker or a piece of chalk, and you write every single thought that pops into your mind. It could just be a scribble, it can be, you know, a little zoop here, zoop there, it can be actual words, sentences, whatever pops into your mind. And then once you've got it all on there, you take your giant eraser and you just wipe it all away. Something else you can do with that is you can visualize yourself, and you can do this physically too, but if you're doing it as a visualization, you'd visualize yourself writing everything down on a piece of paper, especially those negative thoughts. Write them down on a piece of paper, and then you can rip them up. You can put them in water and watch them just dissolve. You can burn them. What I like to visualize myself doing is putting them in a balloon, or attaching them to a balloon and then watching them float away. So that's just kind of that letting it, that kind of Elsa move of let it go and watch it float away, because then it's not your concern. It's not your negative thought anymore. It's out there and it's gone. It belongs to the universe or whatever. I mentioned meditation. Meditation for me is huge. It's something I use all the time. To me, there's not a lot of difference between meditation and prayer. Because I think I meditate when I pray. I've used self-hypnosis before. I find that's really helpful. I know not everybody is okay with self-hypnosis. It works for me. It helps me. You can use positive affirmations like I am beautiful, I am smart, I am good, I am kind. Hug somebody. So when my kids, any of the three of them, get really bad anxiety, I will like just wrap not just my arms around them, I will wrap my whole body around them. I'll often say, I need to talk to your heart. And so I'll get them as close to my heart as I can, and they'll just push their heart against mine, and our hearts will have a conversation, and I will feel them relaxing and calming down. If there's not somebody near you that you can hug, if you've got a pet, hug your pet. If you don't have a pet, hug a pillow, hug a stuffed animal. Hugs are so beneficial. There's so much good about it. And then finally, open your eyes. When you're in a panic, it is so natural to close your eyes and you just don't want to see it. But when you open your eyes, it kind of goes back to that naming it and those, the anchoring phrases and those truths. You can see what you can see. So with my eyes closed, I can't see anything. With my eyes open, I can see, okay, I'm looking into my camera. I've got my ring light. I can see behind it is a TV. Behind that is, the end of my bed, and there's blankets down there. And so with your eyes open, it's hard for your brain to lie to you about what's actually going on. It's kind of like kids are afraid of the dark until you turn on the light. As soon as your eyes are open, it's no longer dark, and you can see what's really there, what's making you afraid. Some key takeaways. These won't work for everybody every time. It's really important to practice. So like I said, I do the breathing almost every single night. I do meditation usually a couple times a day. Practice. When you're in that anxiety moment, you're in an anxiety attack, you've never used these techniques before, and all of a sudden you're trying to get your brain to go, okay, five senses, what are they? Panic. Your brain isn't going to make that connection. But if it's something you've practiced and you've done it before, then it's easier to be like, oh, okay, I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling, my heart rate's rising. I need to calm myself down, so I'm going to do my five senses. I know how to do my five senses because I've practiced them, and your brain just kind of will take over and do it for you. Again, different techniques work for different people. If one technique doesn't work, even in the middle of trying it, switch to something else. You're doing your five senses. You get through you get through touch, and you're just like, I just can't. This isn't working for me. Okay, switch. Let's breathe instead, or let's do robot ragdoll instead. Let's try something different. Something else that I think is really important, it's not going to help necessarily in the moment, but overall, is educate yourself. Learn what your trauma triggers are. So my daughter, and I've talked about her a lot in this video, her trauma triggers are around bedtime and about going to bed, as well as anything related to her dad. Or if she feels like she's messed up, she can very easily go into an anxiety attack if she feels like she's messed up or is going to mess up or is going to fail in some way. My boys get triggered by being yelled at. I get triggered by just feeling like I'm being judged. I get triggered about having to discipline my kids. That's really hard for me, to have to kind of be that tough parent sometimes. I'm really easily triggered by yelling and fighting. So when my kids are bickering, it's really hard for me to stay present in the moment. And it's really easy for me just to go, oh, anxiety, I can't handle this, and shut down. So learn what your trauma triggers are. Learn what starts the trauma reaction or the anxiety reaction. And then educate yourself about the reactions, what they are. So when you're triggered, what happens? Does your heart start racing? For me, my heart starts racing and I have a hard time breathing. Do you suddenly feel really irritable or angry? Do you get a headache? I definitely get a headache. And so I usually get a headache first and then my heart starts racing. And those are kind of my two key things that are like, oh yeah, you've got an anxiety attack coming on. You need to calm yourself down, girl. sometimes, like for my son, my oldest son, I know if he's getting really fidgety and just moving all over the place, he's probably got something going on. I need to help him calm down. Or do you feel lethargic and just want to sleep? If you're normally a really active person and all of a sudden you just need to sleep, that could be something. Now, if you don't know what your trauma triggers and trauma reactions are, you can keep a journal, is one way I found that helps. So you write down what's going on when you're starting to, like when you notice and when you are aware that you're having an anxiety attack. And usually you can't, in the moment, you can't write down, but right after, as soon as you can afterwards, write down what was going on. And you'll start to see patterns coming up. Or if there's somebody that's around you that you really can trust, ask them what they noticed. So, I said my daughter, a lot of her anxiety is around bedtime. So she wasn't aware of this, and she didn't realize that that's what was causing it until finally I said, hey, listen, I've noticed that every time we're doing these, kind of those bedtime or sleep hygiene things, that's when you start to get anxious. And so it helped to recognize what it was that was making her anxiety flare up, causing those trauma triggers. So then we just, tweaked our bedtime routine a little bit. It doesn't always work, but a lot of nights it's, instead of doing, pajamas, brush your teeth, brush your hair, now we brush our teeth first, then put on pajamas, then brush our hair. Whatever our order is, to help get her out of that moment. And then tell somebody. If you are having anxiety, tell somebody. Talk to somebody. Find a therapist if you're able to. I am a huge, huge proponent of therapy. I think it's the greatest thing in the world. Let them know. So say it's not a therapist. Say you're at school and you've discovered that your trauma triggers are related to school. Tell a teacher and say, hey, I'm having a lot of anxiety attacks at school. This is what it looks like when it's starting. If you notice it, can you just remind me, just say the word breathe, or say the word relax, or say 5 senses, or come up with some kind of a trigger word that can help you kind of pull yourself out of that moment and or they can just remind you to do your grounding techniques. If you're at home, tell your parents, my kids know what it looks like when I have an anxiety attack. And most of them will go, hey, Mom, you need to breathe. Or, Mom, you need to just take a minute. And that will really help me get back into that. Oh, yeah, I am having an anxiety attack. I do need to calm myself down. So allow others around you to help ground you. So, but most importantly, remember, you're not alone. If you are dealing with anxiety, there's so many people that are out there that can help you. There are so many resources available. You can do this. If you're in the middle of an anxiety attack, remind yourself this is just a moment. It's not going to last forever, and you can get through it. You can do it. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time. Bye.